I mean, the one I'm really hoping someday, and completely selfish of me,
Yeah.
but on the Devils and Dust tour, he played the Boston Garden, and it was a very odd setup. He played half the venue. Instead of cutting it down the middle, he cut it long ways. If you can
Okay.
do that, a hockey arena, cut long ways down the middle. It was taped for DVD. We had to, there's signs everywhere. You'll be
Yeah.
taped. You come in, and it was never released. Uh,
Oh,
and I've heard him interviewed once or twice. I think he's mentioned, "Oh yeah, we'll get around to it," and other things came up, and
hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. And if it's September and it's an anniversary month, I can't celebrate without one of my favorite guests, still the holder of the most downloaded episode ever, Mr. Blogness on the edge of town himself, Peter Chianca. How you doing, Pete?
I'm doing very well, Jesse. How are you?
I am good. I am very good. I tweeted as we're recording this, it's the end of August, and I have officially reached my 90 days post surgery, and I can eat anything I want now that my stomach will allow.
Oh,
I had to go 3 weeks of liquid only,
oh,
and that was tough. I won't lie to you. That was like I was really tired of just liquids. And then the next 2.5 they recommended soft food only. So you could have scrambled eggs, you could have lunch meat, you could have fresh fruit, but you couldn't have like raw vegetables or a salad or even mashed potatoes, which you think is the most soft food there is. They don't want the starches, they don't want you in there. So anyway, I'm doing good, and I'm feeling great, and I'm ready for summer to be over because my day gig is roadside assistance in the RV industry, and we've had another busy summer.
I bet you have. That's something that probably didn't see much of a drop off.
No.
Uh, people still like to get out. Maybe it was one of the only places they could get out.
Well, yeah. Now we do think that it started earlier in the year, our summer, and we're hoping it's going to end a little sooner because last fall it never ended till like we got to October, deep October, because people weren't going. They were all virtual schools, so why come home? Just stay in the RV and find a place with Wi-Fi and just homeschool your kids in the morning and then explore the great outdoors in the afternoon.
Oh man! Well, let me offer my congratulations first of all on your latest anniversary. That's
Thank you.
terrific. I can't believe it's been that long. I remember when you kicked this thing off.
Yes.
Does not seem like that long ago to me. I don't know if it feels that long ago to you.
No, it doesn't. And I get the guy who runs our network, um, which I know owes you a phone call, and I'm gonna reach out to him again. But um, he joked about when he got off the phone with me, he said, "Hey, Martha, Jesse's going to do a Springsteen podcast. I think we'll get a season out of it." And to him, a season is 12 episodes, right? And he said, and 700 episodes later, I'm just amazed that you've kept this thing going. So you can't, it's the power of the boss, right?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I've been doing the blog now since 2007,
Yeah.
and I also did not really think too far ahead. I don't think I could have predicted, how prolific he would be. First
Yes.
of all, and how he would continue to just surprise us and come out with, sort of new and interesting detours in his professional career to keep us all interested. And I guess maybe if I thought of it, I would, but I don't think I anticipated how much of a thrill it still is to so many people every time he comes out with something new. And I think that's what kept it going and what has kept it going, all this time. To see the excitement when, there's rumblings of a new album or a new tour or whatever it is. And there's just so much material there.
Yeah, I know the last time I had you on, we were talking about Letter to You and the middle and all this other stuff. There was this whole, thought. I mean, there was so much promotion in Letter to You and so many interesting interviews. And then, I, there is one cranky guy on Twitter that is complaining, when are we going to get tracks 2? You've promised something important. I'm like, well, he did give us surprises, and all joking aside, the arrest, right? But the a podcast with Obama, Highway to Hell, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, little Johnny Cougar Mellencamp is one of my favorite DJs used to see, is having him sing with them. I mean, he has stayed busy.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and I think it's really cool. They put off time that if they were allowed to go to Tokyo, they could have, but they didn't. But I'm sure I pictured a huge watching party in the barn where they filmed, Western Stars. I just pictured that they had a huge watching party, and the USA did him proud. So his daughter came back with silver.
Yeah, that's exciting, and I'm so happy for them. And if you see, I don't know if you saw this week, Jessica posted on her Instagram a great black and white photo of the and you can just tell how happy and excited and proud they are, and how could you not be happy for them?
Yeah, I forgot who said, but someone, and it wasn't exactly original, but I had not thought about it. Jeopardy question: what family has an Oscar, a Tony, a Grammy, multiple gold records, platinum records, and a silver medal, right? It's
probably the only one. I can't think of it.
Yeah. So that's really, really great. So before we hit record, you were telling me everyone's well in the family.
Everyone's doing well, getting ready for a new school year for my son, who's heading off to his sophomore year after kind of an aborted freshman year, thanks to COVID.
Yeah.
He did well, but it was mostly remote. And my daughter, who graduated from college and is now back home. So the cycle continues.
There you go. That's good.
I'm not complaining. Love having her. And I hope she stays here and puts money in the bank, which I did not do when I graduated.
I did not either.
I'd always kind of regretted it
Yes.
as I did loans for the next number of years.
Yes.
So yeah, and then we're just waiting for some sort of sense of normalcy. I've been working remote for my day job at Boston.com here in Massachusetts, and we were scheduled to come back in September. Now it's October, and who knows if that will get pushed back again. So it's still a certain sense of craziness out there, and I'm just playing it by ear. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we went back into the office last May and have never left, but we moved into a new office while I was out sick. And so when I moved into the new office, we were maskless, and we were back to, like, if we ordered pizza, we didn't order individual pizzas. We just, threw it on the counter, and all of a sudden we were supposed to do a big party to kind of celebrate the fall, in almost end of summer, celebrate the new building. And all of a sudden our owner's like, okay, everyone masks in common area again. All cater food needs to be in individual buckets. And we've had a mini outbreak in the office of several agents who either them or their child was positive for COVID. Now, so far, no one serious, but that's still, they're off work for 2 weeks to make sure they're okay and symptom free. And it's just, And not to get politically, but our governor here in Texas, like, we're going to make a law where you can't mandate to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
What?
I
Yeah.
can't help but think, in places like that and
Yeah.
Florida, that those decisions will wind up coming back to bite them politically. If you see people around you getting sick, and you've taken the authority out of the local jurisdictions, which is, a lot of these, more conservative, politicians and executives and legislators. That's supposed to be their whole thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Like, oh, we don't need a national Department of Education. We should trust the local school boards,
Right.
but we're not going to trust the local school boards about wearing masks or being vaccinated. And my last political statement, I don't know, everyone I've shared this with had heard it, but Judge Jenkins, who is kind of, in the way Texas is, it's kind of the head of the county, this, and they're called judges, even though they're not truly a judge. That's just pulled over from the Old West. Had said, last week, that if your child needs an ICU bed in Dallas County, the only way they're going to get one is the child that's currently in the ICU bed dies.
Right.
And you're like, what? Wait a minute. No. This is Dallas Fort Worth. This is Dallas County. This is
2021. I mean,
yeah.
It is. It's kind of unbelievable. And I mean, that's why you're going to see, these, the vaccine mandates and some of these other things. And, in the music industry, obviously, this has been, something that has been on the table, since the whole, reopening has been discussed. And Bruce's show, his return to Broadway was, I think, one of the very first ones, if not the first, to require proof of vaccination. And he got a few protesters that first week.
He did.
A small crowd of angry people who don't want to be told what to do.
Yeah.
But I think more people are going to follow his lead, because they need to get back to work and they need to get these doors open. And it's the fastest, way to do that, is make sure people are getting it. And it's, and I know people are concerned now because there are breakthrough infections and all this, but it's definitely the best way to keep people out of the hospital and keep those ICU beds open.
Absolutely.
Keep people from dying. So as always, I'll bring it back to Bruce.
Yes.
Good decision.
Absolutely.
Bruce Landau or whoever made that choice. And I think we'll see it a lot going forward too.
I think so too. Have you gotten out and done any social event, like a concert or a ballpark or ball game?
Went to Fenway, saw the Red Sox right at the beginning of sort of pre-Delta, when things were suddenly normal. It was almost weird how normal it
yes.
felt. And then a little while later, this was very beginning of August, I think August 1st, my wife and I went to see John Anderson of the band Yes. I don't know if you're familiar with their work. She is a huge Yes fan from way back, and we've seen them many times. And he was coming to a little place not too far from where we live, about less than a 500 seat, almost like a club. So we really couldn't resist doing that. And when we bought the tickets, again, it was starting to feel normal. We're like, by the time we went, masks weren't required, but you were a little uneasy. Like I was, the Delta had just started to sort of make the headlines. And I remember looking around in this little place and thinking, if that's in here, we're breathing it in. There's no getting past it. Luckily, we were fine. And it was great to see some live music and to be with a crowd. And, there was a woman at our table who had come alone, and we struck up a conversation with her. She'd seen him many times, and just that camaraderie that certainly anybody who's seen Bruce many times is familiar with. You feel like you're part of that larger family, and I think we didn't realize how much we missed it in this period.
Absolutely.
We weren't going out, so that was nice to get that. And I hope it doesn't dry up as quickly as it came back. I have tickets to see Josh Ritter in October, the folk rock singer, also a big Bruce fan, has done some good Springsteen covers.
Yes, he has.
in his day. So we'll see. That's in another small venue, and hopefully that will come off as planned.
Well, about the same time, July 31st on Saturday night, my good friend Sarah Hickman played at Poor David's Pub in Dallas, a very small, intimate club. And they did ask us all to wear masks unless we were drinking. So like if you wanted to sit at your table and keep your drink going all the time, no one was telling you anything, but
Some people
most
like to do.
yeah, most people were very, there, and it felt so good. By far, Sarah is the person I've seen perform live the most. She's, like in 87, 88, we discovered her and would go see her every time she played locally. And we have gotten to be good friends over the year. And in fact, at the show, when she was doing her encore, what do you guys want to hear? And everyone screamed. And she's like, okay, Jesse, Linda, you tell me what, and I'll play whatever you guys want to play. That was nice. And we got to see her afterwards, and that felt it. There were a few happy tears. The idea, oh my gosh, we're hearing live music. We're here, and we do the same thing. You're talking to people next to you. Oh, how many times have you seen Sarah? Oh, and we were talking to a mom. She had young kids there, like teenagers, like, oh, you're raising her right, going to see live music and feeling good. So, and then I have tickets to see the Rangers this weekend. And so there's a new ballpark. I want to see that. And so we'll be wearing our masks, but I'm looking forward to seeing the new ballpark and going. So yeah, I'm trying to find the balance between getting back to normal, but at the same time being very safe and, thing. Right. And I end every podcast with go get vaccinated.
Yeah.
I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I just got to say it.
Yeah, I heard our Governor Charlie Baker on the radio today talking about the Jimmy Fund, which is the Red Sox cancer charity, and he, he's a Republican, but in a very liberal state, and he has learned how to work with people from across, all walks of life and from across the aisle, and he said it. This the fastest way. He doesn't want to mandate masks again. He has in schools, but he doesn't want to do it in businesses necessarily. But the best way to avoid that is get as many people vaccinated as possible. And we're very lucky here because we have a high vaccination rate. And I attribute that at least partially, to his efforts.
That's good.
And we'll see. Hopefully,
yeah,
better from here.
So we'll switch to Bruce for a moment. I am excited, or I am looking forward to seeing the full release of the No Nukes concert. I realize there's been parts of it there. We've heard the audio, but I think that's a fun little treat to see the band captured during that time period. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I'm certainly, you always get the people on Twitter. It's like, oh, I knew that was coming. That's no surprise. I'm surprised. I didn't, you knew it was floating around out there, but it wasn't a release I was necessarily anticipating. And that should be a lot of fun. I mean, by all accounts, that period was, maybe the height of his powers.
Yes.
Tour into, the early 80s there, and the more photographic evidence we can acquire of that, the better. So yeah, I'm it's still, it's looking back instead of forwards, but that's okay. I think, he just gave us a new album at the end of last year.
Exactly.
Now we get a nice, look back to a glorious past era. I'm very much looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever going to happen, but I would love for them to release either on streaming services or a DVD, the Carousel show, Clarence's Last, where they filmed those. They only released just one or two videos, and I think it would be neat to, even if you showed the whole thing, like, okay, we're gonna give you the raw footage of them practicing in 2 or 3 versions, I think would be an interesting archive of, especially with Clarence passing and that kind of
Yeah.
end of that era.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly these days I wouldn't rule anything out. I
Right.
mean, clearly in that case it was filmed. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the one I'm really hoping someday, and completely selfish of me,
Yeah.
but on the Devils and Dust tour, he played the Boston Garden, and it was a very odd setup. He played half the venue,
Hmm.
but instead of cutting it down the middle, he cut it long ways. If you
Okay.
that a hockey arena, cut long ways down the middle. It was taped for DVD. We had to, there's signs everywhere. You'll be
Yeah.
taped. You come in, and it was never released. Um,
Oh,
and I've heard him interviewed once or twice. I think he's mentioned, oh yeah, we'll get around to it, and other things came up, and so it is sitting out there somewhere. you
oh,
know,
that would be good.
and that was supposed to be the document of that solo tour, which was, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
mind blowing, unbelievable the way he was able to hold that crowd completely and totally by himself. Um, I mean, it was, to this day, I saw him a couple times on that tour, and to this day, it remains one of my favorite.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
so that's the one I'm sort of holding out for one of these
No,
days.
I think that is a great. I would love to see that because I loved, storytellers, and was that same kind of the same period, and so I would
Exactly.
have loved to seen that. I'm according to our friends, at None But the Brave, there are not a lot of rising clean sound because my I would love to have an official release. My first show was in Dallas 2002 on the Rising, and like, oh, how fun would it be to have an official release with that first show to experience? But I guess for some reason they don't have a lot of clean audio on that tour.
Yeah, yeah, and they released some good ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, for whatever reason, I mean, it was, I mean, that was 2000, right? 2002, 2003. They were certainly well equipped
Yeah, there should be,
to
seem to be, yeah.
record it. I don't know exactly
Yeah.
why that didn't happen. I'm lucky because actually, my very first Bruce show, which was with the other band
Yeah.
in, in New Jersey in '92, they did release as one of the First Friday shows. I forget when, last year maybe.
Okay.
So that was really neat.
Yeah.
Of course, I got it right away, and it was so neat to and particularly not the songs, of course, but also the banter in between and the things he said, which came back to me. The things I'd forgotten that he talked about and said, and I mean, it really is a gift the way he
Hmm.
is doing this. And the most recent one, of course, is Fenway
Yeah.
2012, where I was at that show. So I was so excited to see that released. And I went where your listeners can't see, but we are on Zoom, so I'll hold up my CD.
Very nice.
Fenway show. I only order the CDs for the shows I've actually been to.
Yes.
I don't even really have a CD player
Right,
anymore.
but it just seems like
But I want to have something to hold.
exactly. Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
so I can't go nuts with that. But
Yeah.
this was even probably more than I needed. But I have it, and that was some show. I mean,
Yeah, that was a great show.
it and I'd seen him the night before, which was a more traditional, also an amazing show.
Yeah.
But the night before was much more. It was much more of a traditional first night show. It was on the Wrecking Ball tour, so it was very, sort of revolved around that album. And it was very, very moving. It was first post Clarence tour, of course, and very powerful, emotional show. And then the second night, which is the one that it was just released, was looser, and just so many unexpected detours on that show, and so much fun. There was a great 1-2 punch. I'd love if they released the first one too, so I could have them as bookends.
Absolutely.
But that second one really was, for me, he played Frankie, which I'd always wanted to hear live, and that was just, such a great performance. That was where he he had everybody light up their cell phones while he was talking about fireflies, and you saw them
Oh, nice. Yeah.
and a really, really nice effect. You get Thundercrack. I mean, he really, got back into, some of the deep history there. That was the show that started off with the Acoustic Thunder Road, which is Tim and Roy, which he has done, since, but at that point hadn't done since the 70s.
Right.
So you knew,
Yeah.
right?
You're like, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. We're
This is
getting
not
this.
your typical night. And again, I think, and it was sort of, again, backward looking a little bit, the way he revived some of these old things. They did Prove It All Night with the long intro with him and Stevie sort of doing the dueling guitars, which was great.
Yeah.
And his Backstreet, sort of that very sort of extended Backstreets. Although that one had a little snippet of Dream Baby Dream in it in the middle, which was sort of a new twist on that extended version. But it was, I think he was just starting to move in the direction that would eventually lead to his memoir, and to, and the way the River Tour sort of evolved from its celebration of the river to a celebration of his very early career.
Right.
And this was, I think, sure you got snippets of that. You got the beginning of the direction from him.
So, and we're going to talk about your latest blog, where you kind of ranked for fun, Bruce's guest appearances, and but just and no one knows, but I just would love your opinion. Let's say we do get a tour in 2022 that we're all hoping on. Do you think it's a standard, like a Rising Wrecking Ball tour where there's a lot of the new music in there, or do you feel more it'll be like a reunion show?
I mean, it is so hard to say, and there's never been anything like this, where the album has been sitting, came out in November of last year, I believe. But at this point, we'll be over a year later, and that's if they get on the road early next year.
Right.
It could be well over a year later. So it doesn't feel like it would make complete sense to just do a typical, okay, here's the Letter to You tour.
Yeah.
Also, don't forget, Western Stars came out.
Yes.
Since the last time he toured. And I know that's not an album that you can do a lot of songs, with the band necessarily, but if you've heard Stevie's version of Tucson Train, it's possible.
Yes, it is, absolutely.
Do some of those songs with a bigger band, particularly if you happen to have a bunch of horns. So whether or not that comes to pass, but so I could definitely see him. There's this, and he also has done Broadway, which has changed probably the way he approaches certain songs in terms of ones he might want to tackle in a more acoustic fashion, or ways he wants to be more, confessional or whatever. So I feel like there's a lot of factors that could come to the fore as he's planning that tour. Not to mention, like you said, he's showing up in all these other artists' songs. He seems to want to connect somehow with
he does,
fellow musicians, maybe more than ever before. So who knows? We could see people popping up as guests. We could see him doing some of those songs live. Would be kind of fun. So I think there's going to be excitement. It's going to be a hot ticket.
Yes, it will be.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Start saving now.
Exactly.
If you have to buy them, on the secondary market, because they're not going to be cheap.
Well, and and I've kind of, tongue in cheek, when I ask my guest their first time on the podcast, one of the questions I ask is, what song do you want to hear live you haven't? And I preface, and obviously Western Stars Letter to You goes without saying, that you take anything from either of those albums live, right? Like so so you're absolutely, I think that there would be a healthy percentage of us that if he just did Letter to You and Western Stars mixed up with just a couple other, sprinkling of classic Springsteen songs, we'd go away. It was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so lucky that I feel like I've seen almost everything I've wanted him to do. That the end of that River tour, like I said, when he went back and he was doing
Yeah.
all those cuts from Wild and Innocent, and he did an amazing version of Sandy when I saw him at Gillette Stadium. That was mostly acoustic, and I think he almost improvised. I think the band was supposed to come in a lot sooner, and he sort of called them off.
Yeah.
And kept going with just the guitar. Then they came in at the very end. You felt like you were seeing something being created in real time. This very special moment. So it's almost like, what else could I ask for at this point?
Sure, there you go.
So I'd always wanted to see him do This Hard Land, and when I saw him on Broadway, it was one of the nights Patty wasn't there.
Right.
So on those nights, as to make up for the fact that you missed her songs, he stayed one extra song and did This Hard Land, and let you take pictures during it. That was your reward for having with me. So I even got to see him do that.
There you go.
So I will take whatever I can get.
Yes.
Whatever he wants to do is fine with me. But yeah, you're right. I would love, to see as much of that new material as possible. And we've talked about this before. I mean, Letter to You is designed to be performed live. Most
Yes.
of it on that album.
I think so.
The old ones, that he released officially for the first time now, I think would just sound amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
And the newly written ones too. Those, I think, it will be a showstopper. Yeah, it's exciting to think about, and I really hope it happens.
Yeah, me too. So, how the podcast keeps giving, because I keep finding people that are willing to share their Springsteen story, and I'm so grateful. The blog keeps going because there's always something interesting that Bruce is doing, isn't it?
Well, that's just the thing. I mean, and I don't, there are times when I've updated it more frequently than I do now.
Yeah.
It has a long storied history.
Yes.
The edge of town. For a good chunk of time, it was actually something I did as part of my day job when I worked at my last media company. Now it's more of a side project. So it's more, I try to update every week or so, as opposed to, 3 or 4 or 5 times a week like I was doing at the beginning. But you're right. There is always something that, even through this pandemic, that he was doing that made for something, worthy of commentary, or just noting, or providing, links to, or just, just commenting on. And so the most recently, it's hard how do you not notice that he is popping up in all these other artists' songs, and some really, interesting ones. You had mentioned Mellencamp. I'm really looking forward to that album. Supposedly he's going to be on, I think 3 tracks, he said, on an album. And I'm a, Mellencamp fan from way back then, and I always, wondered, why they hadn't.
Yeah, no, that does seem like a good fit.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember seeing them. They both played Obama's inaugural concert, and I remember seeing Bruce. I don't remember if it was in print or if somebody interviewed him at the time after Mellencamp did Pink Houses, and Bruce was just like, "Man, what a song!" Like, clearly he was, even after all those years later, he was impressed by, and it was, that's, I think it's certainly one of his best. So anyway, so that will be coming out, but no one expected this Chinatown with Bleachers.
No.
Who I like very much. I lay claim to, I claim to have discovered the band Fun.
Okay.
Is, Jake Antonoff's band prior to Bleachers, because I don't know where I came across them on a blog. This is, we talk about my blog. It's hard to, it's changed so much, but in the 2000, I'd say, 2005 to 2010, there were so many music blogs, so many.
Yes.
And everybody's just putting up music.
Right.
Nobody was checking.
Exactly.
Crazy
Yes.
Wild West of music blogs, and I discovered so many new artists. And one of them was the Format, which was sort of a precursor to Fun. And then when Fun came out with their first album, I remember reviewing it, being one of the first people to review it, just because they hadn't hit the mainstream yet. So, and then of course they got very big for a while.
Hmm.
And then Bleachers was Antonoff's, sort of spin-off from there. And they're very current. He is the producer of some of the biggest acts out there right now. And to see Bruce pop up with him in that song was so unexpected. I think it's a really good song, and I love Bruce's take on it. He's not what you call an integral part of the song. It's not a duet per se.
Yeah.
Which is probably why I didn't put it a little bit higher on my list of ranking, because I was ranking them from a Springsteen as
Right.
perspective, not necessarily as to how good a song it is. But I think it's just great to see him still influencing clearly younger artists, and them wanting to be a part of what he brings to the table.
Yeah. So you started out the list with Highway to Hell with Morella, Eddie Vedder. And, we had heard Bruce do a cover, when he was in Australia. So this was kind of fun. And of course, all my non-Springsteen fans were hitting me up like, hey, have you seen this? Have you seen this? So I thought it was a fun cover. And they, it was kind of Bruce was along for the ride.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a necessarily great cover, but I mean, he laid it all out there. He did his best AC/DC. I said on the blog, his best vocal cord shredding, take on that song. And it was we'd all heard the version he did in 2014, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And this it's nice to have. I ranked it 10 out of the, which puts it above a bunch of other songs, but at the bottom of the list I did. It kind of felt to me, and I'm just assuming none of them were in the same room at the time, and it felt that way to me.
Yeah, exactly.
But still, it's a lot of fun. It had that, classic Morello guitar noodling.
Yeah.
It was just an acquired taste, but which I find pretty cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, and again, unexpected. It comes, shows up out of the blue, and it's one more thing to sort of keep us interested as, we sort of wait for things to get more back to normal.
Yeah. Number 9, you mentioned Chinatown from Bleachers.
Yeah. Let's do it together.
Yeah. 8, Better to Have and Not Need, Sam Moore. This is one of my favorite songs, and the duets. And I always, whenever we're planning a party, I quote this, right? Better to have and not need than to need and not have. Whenever we're talking about having, people, we're going to do a cookout or we're going to do a work party, it's like better to have and not need than to need and not have. So, and I always hear the song in my mind when I'm doing that. So, as you mentioned, it seems Bruce was just clearly loving that he had a chance to do this.
Yeah, it was, again, I don't think it'll go down in history as this great song, but what a great vibe.
Yes.
What fun they were clearly having doing it, and the background singers are awesome, and the harmonica line is fun, and I don't remember making much of a splash at the time, but that's from 2006. But clearly, this is one of those cases where Bruce is just having a ball with somebody who he really loves and respects.
Yeah, he does. You put number 7, Dustland with the Killers.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That was another one. And again, I enjoy the Killers. They're I used to have a running joke with a younger guy I worked with who was a Killers, huge Killers fan, but was the first to admit that they were extremely in Springsteen's debt. Especially with Sam's Town, which is basically their Springsteen tribute album. So you can only imagine Brandon Flowers like just being like
yes, exactly. Yeah.
the function in his presence. But they do, a great job. And this is, of course, a song that that they had recorded back in 2008. And this is sort of a, not very different, but slightly. They changed the name
Yeah.
from the Dustland Fairy Tale to just Dustland. Um, but I think their voices complement each other really well. It still sounds like a Killer song. It's not like trying to replicate the Springsteen sound completely, but by being there, Bruce brings it into that Springsteen realm.
Yeah. One of the things, I was not a big Warren Zevon fan. I knew who he was. I kind of recognized, but when The Wind came out, I had a couple of buddies like, okay, you need to listen to this, and retroactively, I really learned to love Warren Zevon. So I was really glad you did Disorder in the House. I think Bruce doing My Rides Here always brings, Misty, and Keep Me in Your Heart, I still feel is just one of the great, I know I'm leaving, but I'm going to give you one last song to remember me by. So I really appreciate you including that one.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And yeah, that is the tearjerker certainly on the album. Maybe because he's so matter of fact about it. It's not, like I think I said in the blog, it's not mawkish at all. I mean, he's he is who he is. He's always very, he just puts it all out there. And a lot of the album is fun, and this song in particular is, they're laughing, during the, as they're singing, and they knew he was ill at the time. It must have been very tough
Yeah.
on him and on all the people we worked with. And the fact that they were able to come out with this sort of, joyous take on, and it's very, and it fits well into the rest of his, in that it's just about, everything sort of like falling apart around you, and still finding a reason to get up in the morning. Yeah, I think, and I'm glad you brought up that cover of My Rides Here, which is one of my favorite A1 songs, and Bruce really did. You did a great job on that right after.
Yeah, and I always think of the line, and I don't remember where it was, but him saying that when Brian Wilson married the little surfer girl Wendy, they had twin sons, Warren Zevon and Jackson Brown. And I always love the idea of that, the idea that they were they not identical twins, they were just fraternal twins, and both bringing on the music and the thought of that, and both from that Southern California vibe, but going into different ways. So that's always makes me smile when I think about that. Number 5, Better Things, Ray Davies. You gotta love this. I think the energy and joy of this is just a really fun.
It is. I didn't know this song. I guess I'm not a big enough Kinks fan. But I didn't, before they came out with their duet, I did not know the Kinks version. And it is. I mean, it's a sad song. It's about, it's one of these breakup songs where you're sort of wishing the the person with whom you are no longer, happiness, without you in the future. But it's that very that jangly Kinks sound that it's just so endearing. And then the way they trade verses, it's again one of these cases where you could tell that Bruce just loves the Kinks, loves Ray Davies, is thrilled to be there standing next to him, if he in fact was, and working with him. And so and I also think it just, like you were saying, stands up as a really good song. Beyond sort of the experiment of redoing old songs with new collaborators, it really stands just on its own as a great track.
Yeah. Peg in My Heart, Dropkick Murphys instead of Rose Tattoo. I'm not quibbling either one. I love that when he does Dropkick Murphys, when he plays with them. And I remember, wasn't this originally for like there was like a charity, like you could get this in a like almost a virtual EP or something. It feels like
Well,
somehow that's what I remember.
that was Rose Tattoo,
Okay.
and it's interesting. The only reason, I mean, I could go either way too on both of those.
Yeah.
Rose Tattoo is not on Spotify. And I
Okay.
like
There you go. That's
Spotify.
sometimes.
Yes, I'd like to do a Spotify playlist that people can save and play when these lists. And there were two really. That was one. Actually, there were three big omissions, the songs that aren't on Spotify. Rose Tattoo, but luckily he had Peg on My Heart, so I was able to use that instead. Broken Radio with Jesse Malin, which is one of really the best collaborations Bruce has done, this century, is for whatever reason not on Spotify. Don't ask me why.
Yeah.
And also the cover of When Will I Be Loved that he did with John Fogerty, which I guess is not much of a surprise if you know anything about John Fogerty. He's and
exactly.
He's very sensitive about that subject, so maybe he's keeping it off for that reason. So I actually went back after when enough people said, "Where's Broken Radio?" I went back and said, "Okay, here's a video of it anyway from YouTube, even though I can't put it on my Spotify playlist." And I think, and again, I do love Rose Tattoo, but I love Peck of My Heart too.
I do too.
It's fun.
Yeah.
The energy is great. They're screaming at the top of their lungs and loving every minute of it. And they're they're great too. Obviously a great Boston band. Ton of local history here. So I had to put it in the top 5.
And I also have a lot of happy memories because, my son loves baseball, often like your son. And during, when they did the live, the virtual concert where Bruce, sung in, Chris was just amazed. He was amazed that they were playing at this wonderful venue by themselves. Just the whole night was exciting for him. And so he had not known any of these songs, and so was really enjoyed the concert and did it. So
that went so much better than it really could have.
It had no reason being that well. Like, how do you do a song when you're in Boston, you're in Jersey, you guys can't hear each other really, but it works out,
they sounded great. They sounded great together. Despite the fact that there was no crowd there, they still got the energy up. And we needed it. We needed it.
We did. I absolutely
really underground at that point, and I'm glad they took a chance on it.
I agree too. Number 3, I would have ranked higher, but just because I just love Roseanne Cash. I love everything about her. I've always loved her voice, always loved her music. And then when you saw, I adored Ken Burns' country music, documentary. And she was one of the commentaries, and just hearing her talk about like her dad, let me give you these songs you should learn, and she sharing with him, well, here are songs you should learn. It's just a great song. And and you mentioned like, hey, can we guys do another duet sometime? And I'm right there with you.
I think you could definitely make the argument that it could be higher, and she's by all accounts a lovely woman. And and I think what's different about this track, for pretty much all the other ones, it's Springsteen bringing the Springsteen thing, to an artist who wanted to do maybe not Chinatown would be the one other one that is more unusual and out of his comfort zone. But this, he really, I feel like he's stretched. He does those country harmonies with her, that little, almost not quite spoken word, but a little interlude, without backing music, and it's a perfect complement to what she is doing as the lead artist on the track. and you're right. It's just such a great song. Really surprised me when it came out in 2009. I'm always excited when I hear that Bruce is going to be popping up somewhere. So of course I was going to listen, but this was beyond my expectations. So that's why it made it so high on the list.
And I've not thought about this till just now. When I drove to Nashville in 2014 to see him perform, I kept in the back of my mind, it's Nashville, someone's going to show up. He'll have someone. And maybe because I'm spoiled, the first night I saw him in Dallas in 2002, Don Henley was living in Dallas at the time, and he joined Bruce on stage to do I Fought the Law. So I'm like, oh, Bruce always invites a local musician to join him, and now that I realize it's rare, but I really was thinking Nashville. And I think in the back of my mind, like, maybe Roseanne Cash could, like, was she in town? Could she have seen things? So that would have been really nice to see.
Yeah, I would love to see them work together again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite cover is Jolie Blanc. So absolutely, I love this. I love when Bruce covers it. When I need to be cheered up, I will go and Google when it's a sign request, good call, good call. And just watching Charlie and Susie, like, just he's directing the band from there. So absolutely a great him and Steve. I remember never hearing of Gary U.S. Bonds, but then when Bruce worked with them in that early 80s, him on the radio all the time. And so, yeah, absolutely beautiful.
It's interesting. So my Gary U.S. Bond story, and I've written about this a long time ago, is so I was really getting into Springsteen in the, after Born in the USA came out when I was 15, 14. So that's when I first started, getting into him as a young teenager who's just discovering music and what it could do for you. So of course I went right back and bought all his old albums, and so it was all Springsteen, those first 4 Springsteen albums, all day, every day. So my father comes up to me, and he always had good, I felt like he kept up with the modern music, loved, oldies, loved Chuck Berry and Little Richard and the doo-wop from the 50s, but he also loved Billy Joel, Bob Seger, Rod Stewart. Like, these were all albums that were played in my house. And he said, oh, you got to listen to this. And he pulls out Dedication by Gary U.S. Bonds. He had loved Bonds in his first go around in the early 60s. And he said, Springsteen is, plays on this album. I was like, what? Again, I haven't heard of him. Yeah. I had no idea this existed. Put it on. It sounds like an E Street Band album, because it is.
Yes.
They all played on it. There's Clarence's sax, and there's Bruce singing with him on this track, which is just great. I mean, it's it's a party straight through. And Stevie, I can only imagine his excitement and joy at working on this project. And both the albums that they worked on together are keepers. And
yes, very much so. And so now that I'm reviewing your list, no, I couldn't have put Sea of Heartbreak any higher than 3, because I'm not going to bring down Jolie Blanc, and I'm not going to knock down It's Been a Long Time.
Yeah.
So go back and take that thing away. It's Been a Long Time is such a great song. And you mentioned the part and we were never going to get old. We were never going to get old. And the humor in that, and then hearing that, it's just an amazing song.
It is. Stevie wrote it. I easily one of his best compositions, I think. And as I mentioned on the blog, it's, during, it was in this period of real uncertainty for fans. Tunnel of Love was sort of an odd release for him. It's aged beautifully, but I think coming on the heels of Born in the USA and the live box set, was like, oh, what's this?
Mm-hmm. No, I
This,
absolutely.
this quiet album. And then the tour was, not as necessarily as lauded as, say, the Born in the USA tour was. And then he dismisses the E Street Band, which makes headlines around the world. And I remember thinking, what? I mean, this is like, you literally could not get your mind around it. You just, and then nothing. 2 years, nothing. And then I remember this. So the Southside Johnny, who also had not come out with an album in several years at that point, comes out with this album, which was really one of, I think ranks right up there with his earlier works that he did with Stevie. And this song, and there's Bruce out of nowhere, standing next to Stevie, for the former E Street Band member, and Southside, his old friend, and singing about the old days, and it just, suddenly you felt relaxed.
Yes.
Like, this will hold me over till whatever he does next. And beyond that, so it did. You had that in the moment. And now, all these years later, it holds up as just a great song, and they still, do it occasionally under certain circumstances, and it's always great to hear.
Yeah, this would be one of those that I would love to be able to go to, a festival show or something where they're there and Bruce shows up as a guest and hear this. It is truly one of my favorites. And that, and I Don't Want to Go Home, it just are two of my favorites. So, and I love when they all do it together. So very, very good choice. So you did already talk about Broken Radio and the other stuff. It is kind of, I don't have many regrets, and I know this is not Bruce's style, but it does seem like you could have had a chapter in Born to Run about the night of We Are the World. It just seems like,
Yes.
Hey, let me give you some stories, okay?
You can only imagine what that must have been like. And of course, and he really, he brought it. You can see it in his, in his face when he was, wailing through that one verse they gave him. But yeah, I can only imagine someday someone will write the definitive, account of what happened that night. You see the pictures of Dylan looking lost.
Mhm.
What the heck am I doing here?
Yeah.
And Bruce and Michael Jackson comparing notes, and it really, I can only imagine. I don't think the song holds up particularly well. It's so long and just keeps going on and on. But there's so many of those little pairings.
Yes.
But whether it's Stevie Wonder and Bruce or Ray Charles and whoever, that little threesome with it was Huey Lewis, Cyndi Lauper, and Kim Carnes.
Mm-hmm.
I always wondered why they never did an album together. That was like, whoever thought to put those three together is just a brilliant human being. So it's great to listen to.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I'm so glad. And it's not necessarily, I mean, obviously Bruce didn't show up for Live Aid.
Yeah.
So I'm glad he was part of that.
Absolutely. Bob Costas was a guest on a podcast recently, or this year, and Rob Lowe's podcast, and he was telling the story that he was invited to go to the White House when President Obama was giving out the Medal of Freedoms. And so Costas is there, and I think it's Tom Hanks. I'll have to look at the story. But anyway, there's Springsteen talking to Vin Scully. And like Hanks is like, what do you think that conversation is? Or Costas that conversation? And they said, and I cannot do a Vin Scully, But and so it's worth listening to the podcast just that. But he goes like, I can tell you what it's going to be, and he did a great Vin Scully like. So Bruce, Born in the USA is an amazing album. Smith flies out, goes to second base, and he just throws in a baseball reference in the middle and then back to him, like just as if he was someone visiting in the booth. And that made me smile. So you were talking about the kind of different, it would, Dylan and all these people, and like, does Willie Nelson visit with Bruce? And like, I'm thinking about covering Dancing in the Dark. Well, that would be good, Willie. So there we go.
Well, somebody could write a one-act play.
Yes.
With the imagined conversations I may do that. Thanks for the idea.
Yeah, that would be great.
My next project.
I would love that. That would be such a great play. Oh, Peter, thank you so much for joining me. This is always a blast. Go ahead, promote not only the blog, but your excellent comic strip, which has gotten me through. I love the latest collection, and I love the latest, I see them on Instagram and I always smile and enjoy. So please plug away for a minute.
Well, so you know where to find the blog, we are at bogness-brucespringsteen.net. And the comic strip that Jesse was nice enough to refer to is called Pet Peeves, which I do with the very talented artist Dave London. I cannot draw, so I just come up with the gags. And it features a suburban family whose dad is a big Springsteen fan and comic book nerd, and sort of grapples with having different tastes than his son, who is a big baseball player and doesn't quite understand dad's tastes. Their dog is named Bruce Springsteen, and we just came out with our second book called More Social Than Distant, which was about how the family got through the pandemic. So you can find that at petpeevescomic.com. As always, Jesse, it's a blast talking to you. I love talking Springsteen, and I should mention too, I've been doing some audio Twitter Spaces, which are sort of like Twitter's version of podcasts that disappear the minute you're done with them.
Oh, interesting.
We do that for Boston.com, talking about music, and I always get at least one or two Springsteen references in, no matter what the topic.
Oh, well, good. So very nice.
Look for Boston.com on Twitter, and you could find that there also.
I will certainly do that. Peter, as always, it is amazing. I love catching up with you. We'll do it again when something big happens. I try to get you on here a couple times a year, and so because it's always fun catching up. Listeners, you please go get vaccinated. Remember to wear your mask. Let's continue to social distance, wash your hands, and let's try to get back to normal and be good to each other, because that's the only way we're going to go through this. Thank you, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. Thank you to my Patreons: Andrew Goddard, Betsy Hodges, Levi Petri, Elizabeth Bronson, Stephen Malio, Holly Mack, Steve Rogers, Dale Hosick, Terry Smith, Anna Lynn, Chris Bloom, and Mary Thomas. You all are my monthly angels. Thank you so much for the love and support you give on this podcast. You are greatly appreciated.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. Set Listing Bruce is part of the Southgate Media podcast group. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.